Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Salisha Show. I am so excited to be bringing on a friend of mine for black hair in the big leagues, baby. She is so beautiful and from the inside out and a go-getter, and I am not surprised by her success. Chianti Blackmon has been working in the realm of equity, diversity, and inclusion before it was a thing, like before it was even cool. She's currently the VP of EDI at AMDA, a performing arts school that many of my friends who are on Broadway have attended. And okay, we met. It was a dark, cold night. We were both stage dooring. I think it was Some Like It Hot. And she has the kind of personality that you just connect with immediately. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we met in what felt like such a random occurrence, because we met again on another corner in Hell's Kitchen recently. And then I saw her again at Lincoln Center in line for the Met Opera. I think when something like that happens, to me, it feels very divine and God driven. So I'm so excited to introduce her to you today. When she shows up, she shows up, she's informed, she's intelligent. And when I talk to her, I never want to stop talking to her. She feels like everybody's friend. She's currently working on her doctorate in higher education. I'm so pleased to introduce you. Please help me welcome Chianti Blackmon.
Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. That was so kind.
Oh my goodness. I don't know why I was tripping over my words so much. I already wrote them out. I don't know what I was thinking, but I'm just so happy to talk to you today. And thank you for taking the time this morning. You look so great. How are you? How is your heart?
Well, first of all, thank you. And you look wonderful as well.
Thanks.
I am enjoying this morning. I am enjoy this morning. I I appreciate you asking. I've been trying to live this last year intentionally, not just flippantly saying, "Oh, I'm good, I'm all right," but really tapping in. So thank you for asking. And how about yourself? How are you? Are you rested? Did you
You...
rest well?
No, I didn't really rest, but I was excited to watch the Olympics. And so it's only this one time in 4 years, so I don't feel bad, but my soul also feels joy. And, you know, it's funny how that's how you opened up today, because for what you do for work, I was very curious at what your self-care practice is. Do you have one?
It is evolving. And it is, but it is necessary for folks who do work like us, right?
Especially because you're always taking care of others.
Yeah, any sort of caretaking and just the work it takes to meet people, where they are, wherever they are in their learning, learning of self, learning of the education, right? The learning of um what it means to live in equity, diversity, inclusion, right? And so for me, self-care is both mental and physical. So therapy. I don't I don't know if we talked about this, but my master's is actually in clinical pastoral counseling. So
Work.
so I have training as a mental health professional. Woo-hoo. So
That's incredible.
I'm a fan and an advocate of mental health maintenance and seeing a therapist. I am a Pilates fan.
We
I
love.
Yeah, it's been consistently a year now. It's been 18 months to journey, but the first six were to do. But I would say consistently a year of Pilates work, and recently got into rock climbing. Shout out to one of my team members for putting me on to that. Indoor,
Chianti.
And so what I have found, though, you talk about self-care, those activities require me to be very present in my body. So rock climbing, I don't want to die. Um, I don't want to die. I don't want to fall and injure anything. So you're very zoned in. And I think people are trying to, meet their mark climbing. That's like 20% of my goal. I'm still yet holding on. Right?
Oh my gosh. But I love that though, because some people wouldn't even start because they're like, well, if the whole point is to be up there or to do that, but for you to choose activities that you can't be on your phone at the same time. You have to be fully there.
Yeah.
I I feel like I'm already, even though I've gotten to know you a little bit, I feel like I'm already getting to know so much more about you, even from what we talked about before starting this call. And I feel like you can really get to know a person when you hear about their hair journey a little bit. And so, what is yours? What has been the progression of out of the womb to where you are today? I know you've rocked a couple different looks. And so, how did you end up here? How'd you land here?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. And I agree. With that quote, when a woman cuts her hair, she changes her life.
Honey,
And I anecdotally, I know for women, sometimes when there's a loss of control, the way we regain our sense of control is through our hair. And so when you ask people that question, that's so insightful. So I'm a true child of the 80s. And when I say that, I don't mean because people will be like, I'm an 80s baby, and they're born in like 86, 87,
Uh,
85. And I'm like, I mean, technically, but when I say I'm a child of I am a child of the whole first decade, just the 80s,
Mhm.
which means that I too had a Jerry curl as a child.
Oh, I was wondering where this was headed. I'm like, what's she about to say right now?
Yes. So, I was born in the era first where it was the natural, is what they refer to it, right? The afro. And then of course, coming to America made the Jerry curl very iconic.
Oh my God. The boyfriend with it was wet.
Yes,
Oh
yes,
my
that
gosh.
it's spray, right? And so, as a child and trying to figure that out, and got a relaxer in middle school, because that was the thing. And I remember um navigating that, like, what does it look like? I have very strong childhood memories, as many of us do, Sunday night, getting braids, plaits, with the bobbles, as they call them, or the barrettes. My mom
Yes. Oh my goodness. Those things would always hit me up in the face. I'd be flicking them.
at the blue tin, right? You knew when you got that in the blue magic, what was happening. Um, and also when I think of those braided hairstyles, those twists, those bobbles, I participated in this church program called Awana. I do not recall if that's an acronym. I think that it is. But part of it is you do Bible study, and then there were games. And those games, many of them entailed having a beanbag sit on your head. And I grew up in predominantly white spaces. I'm from Ohio originally. But because of my braids and things, I could run full speed with the beanbag on my head as a child. So my hair, right, aided me in Bible study at the games in Awana,
Let's go.
because I could just, we could put it and run. And whereas, like, some of the young white people that I grew up with, their hair straight, or even if it was curly, different texture. So they had to like move slow, and I could just go. So when you ask me
Interesting.
about like these moments in time,
Yeah.
with hair, they're anchored by these events. My first haircut, I was a freshman. I got the asymmetrical joint, so it
You
was like
did?
I did. I thought I was so grown.
What was the, isn't there somebody who was in music who did their hair like that? Like, um, it wasn't TLC. Was
Salt
it?
and Pepper had the
Okay.
asymmetrical. T-Boz is what brought in sort of T-Boz, Halle Berry with sort of the shorter 90s pixie cut. Right, like my teen years were, they were the pin curls, right? The French waves. You had the French roll. I stayed with the French roll in the back, right?
I still love a French roll sometimes.
Waterfall, the way that Waterfalls had a chokehold on me, and this is where stylists use those Marcel art. The click 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 the metal. Are you familiar
You
with
girl,
Marcel?
you're gonna have to educate me because I'm like, wait. I'm over here trying to like picture what is the waterfall
Okay, so waterfall was where your hair would go up and then down, so it would literally go up into like a high curl and then down,
for
and
the
then it would be
bang or
all
everywhere?
of it. Like you could have a slick bang with like waterfalls, but then they would slick the waterfall back into your French roll. You slept with the scarf and oh
Oh
my
my gosh. Wait, please keep going. This is
God.
amazing.
I can't believe you don't know that. If you look up any 90s hair book, you will see the pin curls and the
Well,
the
I
French
think I
bang.
did because I was a kid in the 90s. I was born in 92. But I remember going and like seeing the books and like flipping through and then choosing the hardest one and being like, I want that. And nobody knew how to, nobody did those hairstyles on me. I would just want to do it. I didn't know what they were called. I just was like, I would see these beautiful women in these books and
Mhm.
I would look at them for hours.
Yes, yes. I mean, and what they first of all, they were size inclusive. You saw women of all shapes, all
Looking
sizes,
fabulous.
hair color, right? She could be blonde, she could have a red streak. Yeah. And the jewelry, the nails, they hit you with the on
Yeah.
the side.
The glam shots. Okay, wait. So you have all these different hairstyles. It's sounding like, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you did the perm, that you didn't stay in the perm. Did you?
No, so I did not, but I did not start my natural hair journey until 25 or 26. So I started my journey before there were YouTube videos,
Yeah.
before it became the cultural phenomenon that we know it of it is today, right? Black women have been, rejecting chemical processing in our entire lives. That is a when you think of just the movements and the connection to our identity, a part of that is what does it mean to be unapologetically you and not alter yourself based upon someone else's preference, right?
Yeah.
For me, that was '06 was my last relaxer, early '06. So by the end of '06, I hadn't had anything. Um, and in order for me to grow my hair out, I did the protective style route. So I would go, she cut an inch, and then, I was a kinky twist girl in the early 2000s. So she hit the little kinky twists. Um, and I did that for maybe 18 months, and my hair had fully like grown out. Um,
Can I ask, in '06, what made you decide I am not going to perm my hair? I feel like that's a moment.
I mean, so life was life, and I had graduated from undergrad a couple years prior to that. And that was not the best time for the economy. Trying to find a job out of undergrad was humbling.
Wow.
Um, and so that part of it was just the journey and life valley of being a new graduate and navigating that.
I have chills. I literally have chills because you're saying your story, but it's so universal. How like and you touched on it earlier, like when we go through any kind of life change, it almost shows up first in our hair. Like in a way, it 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 can be reflected in just a completely different hairstyle, oftentimes a chop, a different color,
Right.
just
Yeah,
a
yeah.
completely different vibe. It's just like,
So well, and I had went through some other stuff too. Like there was some trauma in my life at that time, aside from also job hunting. There were some serious things going on, and I had been. It was already something I was thinking about, and it just felt like now is the time.
now's the time.
Now is if I'm going to do this, now is the time. Hindsight, I know what that was connected to as well. But like I said, maybe a year or two before that, I was already thinking, kind of chewing on it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And um, at that time, I also started graduate school. So I relocated from Ohio to Maryland. And I just sort
Ohio
of,
to Maryland.
Mhm.
That's okay. I'm sorry. I'm like just like visualizing what that because that's also a shift.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's the start of it's the more formal start of my career. Um, we didn't know anyone. I often look at my mother and I was like, I was 26. You let me move by myself across state. And she was like, when you put your mind to something, I knew I wasn't gonna be able to stop you.
But that's real though. And when did you realize that you were smart and confident and ready for the unknown?
So that I stepped out on a wing and a prayer. I wouldn't say that it was I'm smart or confident in making this. It was um I want to go to graduate school. I like this school. I need to figure out how to make it work. And it's time for a change. I felt like I had outgrown where I was
Mm,
in a myriad of ways. And, running from trauma also. I will acknowledge that. But it just all became the perfect conditions, the perfect storm to make the decision to do that. And so, this is when we had MapQuest. We didn't have
not
fancy phone.
MapQuest, Chianti.
I moved not too long ago and I found those old map where I had highlighted the route and the turns. I grew up with truck driving in my life, so I know how to read signs and in the highway and things like that. But I recently found those, and so thankfully it was a straight shot on the turnpike, but it was. And so I picked up, I moved, and I had to figure it out. And that was a beautiful journey. It increased my awareness of the diaspora of Blackness, coming from the Midwest and growing up in a time that I did. People didn't get into the weeds of ethnicity in the way that we do now. So
At
moving to,
all. At
yeah,
all.
no. So moving to Maryland, not only was I learning about a different regional life of Blackness, so Baltimore, DC, and those Black communities. I had never met Black people with accents like that before. Like I was in Baltimore, and my head was like, "Excuse me."
Interesting.
Yeah, I am from the Midwest. They say have an Ohio accent because many newscasters. It's right. And there are parts of Ohio where there are communities that have a little bit of a Southern twang, which makes me laugh. But obviously the Great Migration from the South, we have just that connection. But for me, in my own, it was an explosion of understanding the culture, the subculture, regional diversity, international diversity, and what did that mean just in the context of Blackness?
Right.
um, the DC, Baltimore communities, both unapologetically Black, very different, and they're an hour away from each other.
Yeah, yeah. How did you go from like growing up in predominantly white spaces to like now a huge part of your career is about diversity? Like that's the focus for right now, at least, like of what you're doing. How did you, um, how can I say, like, how did you learn how to talk about it in a way where you weren't afraid what white people thought and but you could also like say what needed to be said or I don't does that make any sense? Because like when you were saying like back in the day people didn't really get into the weeds about race, like I remember like growing up being told like this is a thing but no one's going to talk about it. And that's exactly what happened until 2020. So how did you like identify a language around this before? Because it looks like you were involved in
Yeah,
something about this before 2020 popped off, and everyone's like, "Oh, we have to talk about this now."
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I started my work in these spaces of, like I said, formally in '07, more formally. I mean, as an undergrad, I was involved and a member of the shout out to the University of Akron, Black United Students, right?
Let's go.
Yes. um, but always sort of involved in those ways. But it was for me working in my first, like working in a multicultural diversity office and seeing for myself in my journey how transformational it was to start having language to name my own experiences. So it started with my own process first as I was learning,
Yeah.
both as a graduate student, but also, working with undergrads and their identity development. I too was going through my own identity development. I mean, everything, all the assumption, the biases I had about what it meant to be Black were shattered when I moved to Maryland. And I'm so grateful for that growth.
Wow.
My first group of friends, I think I was the only Black American. And what I mean by that is I had a friend who's from, like, her family's from Ethiopia, a friend who was Nigerian, a friend who's Filipina and Black, right? So I was the only person that, anchored in family, from the South, ancestors, in probably enslaved, right? And that was like okay, wow. My roommate in graduate school was Kenyan. Um, and
Right.
so I just became really fascinated with all of the subcultures. I remember meeting a student from Connecticut. We were talking about going home. It was the giving of thanks break. And they were like, Miss Chianti, what are you looking forward to? And I was like, my grandma's dressing. She was like, dressing?
What's dressing? I've heard of stepping.
And was she was like salad dressing? And I was like,
Girl, what?
and like having to explain to a young Black person what,
Oh, to a Black person. Got it.
yeah, to a Black person, it messed me up because I was like,
Wait,
we
I'm
don't.
sorry. You just messed me up. I didn't know you were talking to a Black person.
Yeah, the young Black student, she was from Connecticut. And so that for me was where regional diversity, where I really was like, oh, wait a minute. Because she thoroughly was confused. I'll never forget, she was sitting in my office and she was like, salad, like ranch. And my jaw dropped and I was like, you don't. And then I had to figure out how to describe to her what dressing was.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
gosh.
and it clearly it's still a memory for me because I was like, you don't know what dressing it? How do you not? What do you? And then when I described, she said stuffing, and I went, no.
Whoa, you right. Okay, for my people who are listening right now, I got a lot of races who listen to this show. And for what I've noticed, usually Black people call their stuffing for Thanksgiving dressing. White people call it stuffing. Like if it
Well,
is,
there's a distinction. There's a difference
they
between the
taste different, but I like dressing better.
well, so because they're not the same. So listen, I love that you have a diverse listening pool. That's beautiful. So if you're not familiar, stuffing is white bread based and typically rooted in like a crouton of some sort, but it's white bread and it is stuffed into the bird, right? Or people will use stovetop. That has not ever been my family's ministry, but some people do that. Dressing is cornbread based and is typically not baked in the bird. And the bird could be a chicken, turkey, whatever. And so those are, and then it has roots in the South. And so you have different bases, different cooking styles. But yeah, the highest praise is when my grandmother said I can make the dressing in the family, and everyone was impressed and thought it was grandma. So
Listen, that is truly the highest. That is like, you know what I love about you, Shianti? Like I can tell that you are really good at what you do because when you're even the way you just explained that right now, it was so not condescending. It was so not like you should know what this is. It's very like how inclusive, like language around it, and it just is like I don't know, it's refreshing in a different way, and I can only imagine what it is for like the students. How have you been able to like clock? Because sometimes you can help people and have no idea, but have you ever been able to clock a time that you helped a student?
you know it's funny. I mean, my journey, just taking it back from Ohio to Maryland, was anchored in an experience I had. I was an apprentice optician after undergrad, and it was a young mother. She had maybe like a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and an infant, and she radiated light. Young mom, she was so positive. She needed to get herself glasses. She was trying to get her 5-year-old because they were getting ready to start school. So she was getting them situated. And, she's navigating these 3 bodies, including her own. And, we were talking about the insurance and everything. And it got to a point and she said, well, can I also use my husband's insurance? And I said, yes, as long as you're in that. And then she went on to share that she needed a moment to pull some information up because she had just recently lost him. It was a freak accident, like freak accident. She just, their baby, when I say an infant,
Oh my God.
like under 6 months, under 5 months, like it was an itty bitty baby.
Oh my
Um,
God. Oh my
you would
God.
you would not have known that 30 days ago, and just her light. And we had such a powerful conversation because I was like, oh my goodness, my condolences. I asked her, like, how are you with everything? That you just sort of, because she just sort of said it, but I know she was in the zone of like, I got to get this done. I was trying to get, I got to get this and I have to do this,
Yeah.
taken care of. And she said, you know, um, I know that tomorrow is not promised, and I loved him and he loved us, um and I have to choose to continue on for my babies. I feel and I have my moments, but it's important that I also show them, that you can move forward. And she talked about the power of faith in her life,
Oh my God.
and what was sustaining her. And you have to forgive me because this was, almost 20 years ago that we had this conversation. And what I most remember is how I felt in that conversation, which was awe and admiration, because I thought, here's a woman you would have never thought she was walking through what she was. I mean, less than 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that for me was like, you never know what people are carrying.
Right.
You genuinely do not know what people are carrying. And so when you ask me that, I would tell students, our stories are not our own. You could just be having an exchange with someone, and whatever you share, that little snippet of your journey, how you overcame something, or if you're vulnerable and you share a struggle, you don't know how transformative. She had no idea what I was enduring in my life. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I joke about this because I will say this office, but there was a moment at church, maybe a week or so before that, where it was the Viola Davis tears, like we are in the
Yes.
praying circle.
We love a
and
Viola Davis tear.
and I mean, but it's like that pleading that I could not handle what I was going through anymore.
Yeah.
Like it was that for me. But to listen to this woman and her share her perspective of faith, for me, she has no idea how that conversation transformed my life. And so when I think of the work that I do, that is what it's about. It is about, one, providing you with the language to articulate your experiences, because words have power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and there's it is a skill to speak your truth, and to name that. Um, and also disrupting this need to get it right and to be perfect. But how do you accept responsibility? How do you atone? And how do you understand that when someone shares with you that you've caused harm, that is an invitation to a relationship, not a condemnation of you. So if I come to you and I say, hey,
Oh.
we were talking and you have made this comment about this, whether it's something personal, sister to sister, whether, it was across identity difference. I know we share, similar identity as Black women, but we are different generations, right? If it's in that, and you come to me, it is an invitation for relationship building. You're not coming to shame me. It's, hey girl, we had this conversation and I felt this way, or this was harmful, or this behavior. And thank you for giving me this information so that I could be better for you and for our relationship, right? You're giving me information. And so that probably in the last 5 years,
Well, freaking said. Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
because people feel like me calling you in or calling you out is an attack on your personhood. And my ask of you is, when that happens, do a we the Social Justice Training Institute, shout out to those good folks. They talk panning, pay attention now. What is going on, right, in your body? Why are you feeling defensive in this moment? Do you feel vulnerable because it was information you didn't know? You used the wrong term, the wrong phrase. Do you feel shame because of that? Do you feel frustration because you didn't know how to articulate it, right? Well, like, what is going on?
Right, right.
Checking in, because I'm not saying that you are a terrible person. I'm saying, hey, we had this engagement, this interaction, this conversation, and what you said was problematic in this way, and whether
I'm
or not it caused me harm.
right. Right. Oh my gosh, that is so well said. Like, and a lot of times, because I have a lot of white friends. I grew up kind of like, I was like the only black kid for miles and miles. Then I moved to Harlem. I'm like, oh my God, wait a minute. I've never been in a space with this many. But my first white boyfriend, he said it, oh, Chianti, like a compliment. He was like, oh, Salisha, your hair is so nappy today. I'm like, oh, Lord.
No.
I know. And I had to like, not having any tools in my tool belt of like, how do I talk about this? How do I bring this up? How do I say this? But having to tell him like, that's like, we don't really use that word like that.
Culturally insensitive.
Yes. And you could tell he meant it like from his heart. Like,
But that's the thing, right? We get caught up in intent versus impact, but your intention doesn't absolve you from the harm of your impact.
oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to replay this, honey.
It doesn't. And so he meant this in this loving way, didn't have the language, went into a cultural lexicon that was antiquated, and in effect, to try to love on you, microaggressed you. That was the opposite.
Okay, I've got a complicated question for you.
No complicated questions.
No, this one is complicated. What do you do when another black person says something like that?
So I find that happens with elders.
Yeah, they. Mhm,
Yes,
mhm.
that
I'm not
happens.
trying to call nobody out, but
No, yeah, it's generate. Listen, my grandmother and I love, listen, both of my grandmothers are still alive. They are both in their 80s. They are phenomenal women. And one of them still uses the word colored. And I was like, Grandma, you can't. And I was like,
Grandma.
that's not. And she's like, I'm not black, I'm colored. And I was like, and then I had to sit and say to myself, because this is a family member, right? So we
Yeah.
have a different level. So I have to understand context, where she was raised. My grandma's from the South. Like, she moved to Ohio later in life as a teen. Um, so her context of growing up and what that means and what it meant to be black during that time versus not. And you use the same tools, right? It's still about understanding where it's coming from and naming, right? I think it's important to name it, to say it. What you're describing is what we call horizontal harm.
Mm,
It that intra-group conflict that happens, and every group has it. People act like, I hate when folks speak in absolutes about their group. We the only, you don't know that. Have you met every cultural group to
right,
know the dynamics?
right.
And so that's horizontal harm that happens, and I find it happens intergenerationally more. So whether
Yeah,
it's conversation about hair, because there was a way to look, to be,
back in the day.
right, which is rooted in respectability politics, which is anchored to, um, white dominant culture, which we're all swimming in.
It's
We're
if your
all
hair was like this, you're not going to get the job. And there, some of that fear is still underlying, even though it is changing today. I think
yeah,
it's the steps in the right direction of, okay, the Crown Act, I can wear dreads to
yes.
Disneyland. Like, yeah,
Yeah, if whether you wear locks, whether you have braids, whether you wear your fro, a twist out,
yeah.
um, being able to allow your hair the space to be and flourish in ways that have meaning for you. And that's for everyone. You know, I think of non-binary folks and what their hair journey, whether it's facial hair, whether it's the hair in their head, you know, looks like. Also being able to be authentic, be yourself, and not feel like you have to be in a box and play by someone else's rules. And that's what this work is. It's the interrogation of the ways in which we've been socialized that prioritize particular groups um, as a standard over others, whether it's gender, whether it's race and ethnicity, right? Nationality. Yeah.
Can I ask you something for my own? This is truly for my own, like, learning and benefit. When somebody has said something unjust to you
Mhm.
or was unfair, and okay, I'm really not saying what I'm really asking, which is if you, Chianti, experience racism or a microaggression, how do you handle it? Because I still don't know what the heck to do. And even just the other day, like all this stuff with the political race coming up, I'm like, oh no, things are happening. People are coming out of the woodwork. Somebody came down the street with their Confederate flag. Somebody like walked up to me in the park and said the N word and walked away. I'm like, I'm in New
God.
York City. What? This
Yeah.
happens here too? Like, no. Like when some, but those are like people who I don't know. Like, what do you do? How do you handle it when it's either really subtle or not subtle? What do you do?
So the context matters. I mean, obviously there's always a risk assessment, you know, and how and what I'm going to say or do. First and foremost, I just want to say that it is okay to come back to it later if you know the person.
Okay.
So like, the relationship matters. Like somebody walking up to you on the street yelling that, it's polarizing. I feel like a flood of emotions happen. You go from like shock to you're trying to process, you
To
know,
also, is this person got a gun? If I
yeah,
say anything?
yes, there's a full scope of emotion. So the relationship you have with the person, I think, informs perhaps how you may address that. So if I have a relationship with you, depending on what it is, in the context, is it at work? Are you a friend? Right. Um, I may take a beat depending on how I want to address it. I live by do no harm. And so if I can't engage in this conversation in a way that aligns with my values, you know, I prefer to take a moment to get there because I am entitled to feel how I feel in the moment, and then come back to it later. So I just want to name that. A microaggression, I might hit you with a, what do you mean by that? Like I'll feign ignorance.
Love that.
What do you mean by that? Can you help me understand what you mean?
I
Depending on the
like that.
relationship with you, I might say something like, it's difficult for me to experience you in this way. I didn't know you to be a person to have those beliefs or to say those things. And it's I don't know you to be this type of way. So I might use that. I might use education, right? And again, and this is not necessarily about conversion or changing a mind, but I am giving you information. So I might say, actually, that's inaccurate. Affirmative action has actually benefited white women more than any other minoritized group. So I'm not quite sure where this myth came from. So I might use a fact like that. Uh, and then lastly, it might be the incredulous response of, excuse me? Come again?
The spectrum of, so what do you mean by that? To excuse me?
Yes, yeah. So right, the context matters and figuring out what feels good for you in that way. And again, all of this is happening in 0.04 seconds, right?
That part.
Right, of how do I want to respond? And
Right.
it's unnerving because we feel de-skilled, because it's polarizing.
Yeah.
If being called a racial slur, it's you kind of like, excuse me, but also a genuine fear. Because if someone can
Is that bold?
such vitriolic language to you, what else would you do?
In public. Exactly. And
Right.
we're alone. Ain't nobody out here.
Right. So there's definitely the risk thing, and then the relationship dynamic. Absolutely. But it's not about perfection. I call it progress, not perfection, right? you it's a skill. The more you start to figure out ways to disrupt it and to name it when it's happening, the more versed you get at it. And will you ever land in a perfect space? No. But the goal is to inform the person of the harm that they're causing. And again, the degree of you doing that, right, determines your perspective on the relationship. And I think it's complicated because when people are in relationship across difference, whether that's romantic, whether that's friend, the assumption is my proximity means that, oh, I'm not homophobic, I'm not transphobic, I'm not racist, I'm not sexist. But there are millions of fathers who would take a bullet for their daughters and their wives, perpetuate sexism. There are people who are married to folks of color, to Black people, who are racist, perpetuate racism. Um, your proximity does not mean that you do not perpetuate these systems. And even if they're not perpetuating them interpersonally, it doesn't mean you're reinforcing the system systemically. And so that's what's important to know. I think a lot of times people feel like, well, it was the running joke. I have a Black friend.
Yeah.
That's also a problem. We don't have a lot of diversity in our friend groups also. Like, one exercise I'll have people do is think about a major milestone in your life, or if you think of your funeral, what does that room look like?
Right. Wow.
You know?
Whoa,
It's not just,
Chianti.
yeah, what does that room look like? Your wedding, what does that room look, cost aside? Because I'm not mad at people cutting because of budget. You got to do what you got to do. But I mean, but that's real. But like, what does that look like? What does your community look like? For folks who have kids, people, I love being in sessions when I'm facilitating, and people will say, oh, my kids are in diverse schools, but they're watching you. Are your friend groups diverse? Your sphere of engagement, where you're going, the literature in your home, the art that's displayed, what you go, what you celebrate, all of these micro messages are cumulative. So yeah, you may have your one friend,
Oh
or your
my
kid at
God.
this school, but what are we really demonstrating to our communities?
That is so well said. That is, and sorry, just saw my eyes roll to the back of my head because I bought something from a neighbor last year and she was like, come on over and pick it up. And I went to her home, which was very big and beautiful, but the art on the walls was like a very, very, very dark person feeding a white person grapes. And like,
Oh,
I was like, but it was like more on multiple walls. I'm like, what is happening? And does she realize that this is on her walls? Like, it was so you just saw me die inside a little bit remembering that. I have one more question for you that may or may not make it into this, because this is not a political show. This is not a political show. However, you're a Delta, right?
I am a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Kamala is an AKA.
She's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Yes.
You would vote for her?
Why would I not?
Tell me why.
Well, woo, the layers.
I know. I know.
I think for me, at this time, when I see what the previous administration, so 45, the outcomes of that and the very attack on the rights of communities that I belong to and communities that I stand in solidarity with, I cannot, in good conscience, support a party that is about glossing over the real systemic issues that are occurring based upon the policies and the people that they put in place, or that are further harming communities, right? Rolling back and trying to repeal. And so, you know, yes, she is a Black woman. Yes, she is a member of the Divine Nine. There's a shared subculture, right? Being a part of a historically Black sorority. And none of that is what is driving for me. Like, her identities are beautiful and representation matters, full stop. But that is not for me why I would cast my ballot for Vice President Harris. For me, it is about aligning with someone who has the diplomatic skills, the recognition of what the elections in this country mean globally. So someone who has the diplomatic skills, someone who has worked who has experience, because the presidency is not a first time entry level into government role. And someone I know who is going to fight. And again, I know that, similar to even the Obama administration, was not perfect. I had critiques of that administration as well. But when I look at the totality and what we are to do as people of this country, is to hold our parties accountable. And I feel more confident in holding her accountable than the lack of accountability we have seen repeatedly occur previous administration. So, and by that I mean 45, not President Biden. I want to be very explicit about that. So those are, for me, just a myriad of reasons, because our lives are at stake. And you and I have talked about this, right?
Yeah.
Life imitates art, and I need it to stop. I need that to stop now. I need the art to start looking different. I need us to stop picking up Shonda Rhimes's scripts from Scandal.
Oh my God. I
Just go
love
ahead and put that
Scandal.
down. So do I. As a fictional show, I need them to put down The Simpsons, right?
Oh
I
my
need us to
God.
put that stuff away. I need us to not lean into that. Not at all. No.
Oh my goodness. Chianti, well said. Thank you so much for coming on here, for being open and vulnerable, and also dropping knowledge and educating as well. You are such a gem, and just thank you so much. How can people find you or follow you?
Oh, yes. So I have a consulting business. It is the Grace and Growth, Equity, Justice, and Transformation. And I'm on Instagram at the Grace and Growth.
We love.
Yep. So that's where the people can find me there. And then I proudly work for AMDA College of the Performing Arts in New York and Los Angeles. As you noted, we are well represented on Broadway, and
Yeah.
it is powerful to do this work in this industry, because these are the people who bring vision to life and have the power to transform in ways that we don't even realize we're being transformed. So yeah, shout out to AMDA also.
You guys, Chianti Blackmon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Salisha. It was a pleasure.
The pleasure was all mine.